No? Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the sixth webinar organized by CHRO on the topic of industry responses to COVID-19 and lessons. Indeed, this is a very significant topic for this. We're all in a state of flux, in a state of uncertainty due to the pandemic, and there are a lot of unknowns around us. Business schools have really not even conducted the final year examination in majority of the schools. There is a state of uncertainty also in how would the admission process be in times to come. Would we be able to conduct the classes face-to-face or would we be having virtual classes? To top this all, the question that are in everyone's mind is that how are we going to do this? Are the economies going to change? Will we be looking at different set of skill sets? And are these post-COVID-19 here to stay? Are few questions pondering our minds. Today we have with us a very, very eminent panelists who will be guiding us on how industry is likely to respond post-COVID-19. Let me introduce to you our first speaker and panelist today, Dr. 𝗕𝗦𝗰𝗵𝟑. 𝗕𝗦𝗰𝗵𝟑, before I give introduction, is an esteemed board member of our association. She is currently working in the capacity of Global Chief Human Resource Officer at 𝗓𝗲𝗀𝗑𝗏𝗏. She has had a large tenure with organizations like 𝗖𝗢𝗩𝗏, ACC, Accenture, and many more. And she has been closely associated in advisory capacity with a lot of academic institutions. Welcome, 𝗕𝗦𝗰𝗵𝟑, today to this particular program. We also have with us Dr. 𝗕𝗏𝗧𝗓. 𝗕𝗏𝗧𝗓 is currently the head of Human Resources and Site Administration at Intercontinental Exchange India, parent company of New York Stock Exchange. She has also been associated with a lot of academic institutions, deemed universities, in some way or the other, in Hyderabad. She also comes from the talent management side. Both of them have seen a lot of it in India and cross-border as well. So go to 𝗕𝗦𝗰𝗵𝟑 first. 𝗕𝗦𝗰𝗵, can you elaborate on how do you see the industry coping with this pandemic and the impact of COVID-19? And is it going to make any structural changes in the organization? How do you see industry responding to COVID-19 situation?
First of all, good evening and thank you very much for having me here. I am very closely associated with well, I didn't, believe me, this music was not mine. Having said that, my mother was a professor and I belong to a family of academicians, so I can quite understand where this conversation is going. If you look at the industry, this is a new phase for everybody. But let's also understand that disruption and innovation has been here to stay. During my tenure at Accenture, I actually worked from home. Almost my 4 years stint with Accenture, 3.5 years actually. Most of the time we worked from home, but of course we defined what functions. So now this is something which is, if you notice, TCS has already announced that we are going to be in Essar. We are also going to be doing something similar. We are trying to find out as to what is going to be the new work culture. In terms of optimization, we are definitely working at optimizing our overall structures. What are the structures that we can do away with? Where is it that we are spending? So I think this is giving a new spin on the entire outlook of how human resources is actually looking at different aspects, whether from hiring to training to retention to succession planning to seating, to a whole host of things.
Great. Let me get in Dr. Kiranmai here. Kiranmai, you've been working cross-border well along. I know Tanya has also been doing that. But how do you see this changing trend? How is this going to impact the Indian industry as such? What is your opinion about it, Kiran?
Good evening, everyone. It's really wonderful to connect digitally with all of you, though we can't see every one of you. Thank you, Dr. Apurva. And Tanaya has put it really well in terms of what the industry has experienced earlier from a work from home for certain functions. But right now, it's cutting across everyone, especially the IT industry or the ITES, which I represent currently. This is not unknown in terms of work from home for a large section of the workforce. But having said that, it's going to be different right now in terms of client engagements. Not every client would be, depending on which vertical or which industry the client is from, may not be extremely happy with a work from home concept, because remote working has its own challenges. It has its advantages, but it has its own challenges. Now, as we talk about India in particular, the way I look at it and the way a lot of industry heads today, because in the last 1 month, we've been having a lot of deliberations, discussions, brainstorming, watching the trends. You name the big four consultancies, be it Deloitte, KPMG, EY, and so on. Every single one, including BCG, we've been actually involved in some discussions with each one, and they've been presenting to us what could be the economic impact across the globe, and especially India. And within India, we're also looking at it from a sector-wise or industry-wise. The good news, let me give the good news first, and then we will come to the challenges. The good news is it is definitely advantage India at this point of time. And even 6 months later, 1 year later, we do not see a major, in the sense it's not a catastrophe. Let me put it that way. There will be challenges. There will be definitely challenges all of us will experience, but not to the extent where India needs to look at it as so many companies will go bankrupt, job losses, people will have pay cuts. It's not such a bad scenario across India, especially when I can speak for a sector like IT. So within this industry, which contributes to a huge GDP pan-India, which actually necessitated Ravishankar Prasad, the IT minister, central IT minister, who hooked up with all the IT ministers across multiple states to discuss the scenario, understand what needs to be done to IT in particular, given the GDP. In fact, the state governments have been advised to give away work, because there would be a lot of work from the government, just as they would do so in the manufacturing, construction and other major infrastructure projects which they have to infuse, because that's the only way you can keep the economy functioning and reviving or bringing it back, because you will have huge unemployment and you need to really keep people occupied. At the same time, rev up the economy by, be it quantitative easing, which again in India seems to be a little more difficult. So RBI is working on it. And interestingly, from whatever we see, 6 months are going to be extremely challenging, the 6 months of this year, but slowly but surely, economy is going to really look up for India, because the talent in India is something which the world over now it's recognized, A. B, if the major economies in Europe and US are impacted, as we all know, given the COVID, there is no way they're going to take care of the kind of work which will be emerging. So a large part of the dependency will continue to be leaning into India. And I'm sure all of you must be seeing the news, wherein given certain factors about China right now, a large number of companies are also interested in moving manufacturing and other sectors. It will take time. We all know it doesn't happen at the toggle of a switch. So in the next 3 years to 5 years, you will see such great momentum that things will start moving into India. But India has to keep up its commitment and its promise. So Indian workers, be it knowledge workers or others, They're all capable, but the commitment and focus and delivery on time is going to lead the path. I'll pause.
I just will bring in Danaya here. Danaya, I just wanted to quickly want you to ponder upon the fact that what kind of industries will see the growth trends. On one side, Kiran is saying that we need to be a little optimistic. IT, yes, there is no issue and challenge in terms of getting scared with what's around us. But at the same time, there are certain industries. For example, today there was an announcement that the aviation industry is going to be taking 10% layoff, and so on and so forth. So all kinds of news items that are emerging around. So Tanay, what do you see would be the trends in the industry, and which are the sectors which are likely to grow?
Okay, so first of all, I like Kiran's positive tone, and yes, there is definitely you are looking at India rising for sure. But it's a fact that a lot of companies or a lot of sectors are suffering. For instance, retail, food industry, for instance, construction, manufacturing is all being hit and hit very, very bad. In this scenario, what is it that is going to quickly come up? I have a couple of ideas which I have just scribbled down. For instance, digital products will do very well, because if you're in the app business, if you're doing different kinds of apps, because you see what is happening is how quickly are you able to turn it around, because it has become as we call it agile world, agility. So that is a very, very the quick turnaround is very, very important. The other one which is going to be very, very fundamental and very good is the gig economy. What do I mean by a gig economy? A gig economy is like an Uber or Airbnb. What happens is you outsource this piece of work to somebody else, and somebody else does it. So large corporates, who are having a problem with recession, because you see, this is a butterfly effect, so if one thing is affected, it just goes down to the last. So therefore, gig economy is going to do very well, because they're going to hire people to do a particular piece, and then they move ahead. Another thing which is going to do very well is stock markets, because this is the time to buy. So everybody is, who has the money is buying, and people are expecting the stock markets to go up very, very well. Another piece which is going to do very well is mental wellness, because you see, people are very, very they are going through a lot in the coming times, because they are scared, because they really don't know what is happening. There is a lot of recession, there is a lot of job loss. So mental wellness as a field is going to do very well. And this mental wellness could be coaching transformation, it could be diet, it could be things like yoga, occult sciences. These are some of the things which are going to do very well. Your profession is going to do extremely well, which is online coaching, teaching. How do you move up the learning curve? Already, you did see things like Byju's, which is already there and everybody's talking about it. So you expect a Byju also in the management schools. So things which are app based, which is quick on the uptake. Already I see a lot of colleges are going through Zoom, and I see online classes everywhere. So I think your piece, it depends on how you are able to move up the learning curve, but this is something which is going to do very well. Insurance is the other thing which is going to do very well, because we are expecting insurance to boom because of recession, because insurance really is, if I put it very quickly, I've been in the insurance industry. It's actually telling it. So people will start looking at insurance in a slightly different way. Gaming is going to be very, very big, as all of them are now. If you see the young adults sitting at home, what do they do with their time? That's something which of course China was very, very good at. But of course now they have this thing that people in China cannot do a lot of gaming. So gaming across the world will do very well. Healthcare will do extremely well, because that is something which people have become extremely conscious, and a lot of investments across the world is going into healthcare. I will pause here. I have a whole list, but I will just leave it there.
I think I want to also talk a bit on a very, very delicate topic, and that delicate topic is the topic of pay cuts. So there are a lot of discussions that are happening around pay cuts. On one side, people are happy to have 2 months layoff from their jobs where they get no salary and come back to the jobs where the job is secure. On one side, this is the opinion. On the other side, some of the companies who have gone ahead with a pay cut of 25%, 50%, this will also have long-term implications on the B schools for the entry-level packages as well. From that perspective, I want you to on this area. I know we don't want to get, we want to have realistic information on it.
Kiran, you going first?
Yeah, sure. So, Dr. Apurva, on the pay cuts, yes, there is definitely going to be some pain, and we already see the trends commencing. Most of the larger organizations, especially the ones who are not impacted as much, I'm referring to not the travel industry, hospitality industry, retail industry, and so on. Can I request all others to go on mute?
Yeah, kindly go ahead.
All right. So the industries which are not as impacted, like the retail, what Tanaya mentioned, retail, hospitality, travel, tourism, and so on. These industries which continue to have business, but the business impact will be there, challenge is there. In these industries, we have seen deferment. The first thing which you have seen in most of the industry is deferment of pay hikes. So there is a merit cycle. Majority of us typically do it in June timeframe. Some of them could have done in the Q1, but all those are held off right now. So March or April effective or June effective, all of them have been deferred for at least a quarter. It's a wait and watch mode for majority of these organizations. But let me tell you, from an employee perspective, you're right, Dr. Apurva. They're not as worried because having a job security is much more important than having a pay hike at this point of time. Pay cuts will happen in the impacted industries much more. And in the services industry, we will see it also because it's always dependent on the client engagements and the client contract fulfillment. And that's where things are tightening. And hence, you're seeing 20% to 30% pay cuts happening, and with no merit hikes happening for this year. So that's a reality all of us have to really be abreast with. But there are large numbers who are going to be out of jobs. And this is the MSME sector, especially, which will be deeply impacted unless the government comes in and does some protectionist measure to take care of this manufacturing and other industries where without the capital influx coming in, they will not be able to survive. So we will have to see in the next couple of months what measures will be taken by the government to protect the MSME sector in particular. If that's not done, some of them will definitely go bankrupt, and you will have more of an employer market today, as we say, more supply than demand for talent. And hence, from a B school perspective and outflow of students, the good news is majority of the industry who have made offers, all the big four, as I say, or the MNCs and so on, are largely in India. They're honoring, as far as we know, whoever we are speaking to, all the IT industry is honoring their commitment, and they're going to continue to take on the offers they have made, and they will onboard employees who have made offers. So which means all the B schools, if the placement is already done, and if it's in one of these industries and not the impacted industries, it's easier for them to flow in and continue. It's for the next year which the B schools will see a problem, in the sense you will have a larger supply than demand. As I said, 2021 is when it is a problem, and you'll definitely see smaller pay packages than the fancy pay packages, which especially in some of the industries has become the norm. So that new normal will set in, and people will be a little more guarded in terms of what kind of pay packages they're going to offer and bring in talent for the same roles. Tanaya?
Yes, we as human resources, we have a lot of tricks up our sleeves, like I say, because it's always very difficult to take, when you're talking business, it's also about, how you can negotiate and what is it that you do. So I think the first thing that we look at is what can we do about incentive. So incentive payout is usually about sometimes 20%, 30% of the total cost when we're looking at compensation and benefits. So the first thing to do is to probably defer the payment of incentive. So that's the first that we're doing. The second that we're doing is increment can be freeze increment. So let's not give increment at all. Let's not do that compensation benchmarking. Let's not do that comp ratio. So increment is the second thing that we are looking at. The third thing that we're looking at is that, look, there are, when you're doing a compensation, there is also a list of things that you can claim. So your list of, like, your driver's salary, your telephone bills can be deferred that payment at this time. So that's a third thing that we're doing. The fourth thing that we're doing is in terms of compensation can be give a pay cut. If so, what is going to be the impact? And they're also looking at levels. For instance, if for somebody who's at a junior level, the pay cut will be much lesser than somebody who's at the senior levels. So the idea is also to see that the senior people can sustain, the junior people can't. So can we be more empathetic towards our workforce? So therefore, the cuts will happen more for the seniors than the juniors. So that's the thing that we're doing. The last thing that we're doing is, look, since we have number of verticals, we are trying to see, okay, so if you've got these interns who've been with us for a year, can we offer them to other businesses? So looking at the current vacancies and seeing if we have an excess somewhere, can we move those excess somewhere else, or upskilling, or ensuring that they are trained to move there. And the last resort obviously will be that, if we are not able to train or upskill and we are still not able to pay the kind of compensation, then obviously we will have to look at, how we can ease off people. But that's the last thing on our mind. Having said that, are we hiring? Yes, we are hiring. Is the market paying? Yes, the market is paying. So I think that, things will take some time. We are all hopeful. We are hopeful, like Kiran was saying, that, that made in China will go away and it's going to be made in India. So all these will come. So hopefully in the next couple of, I wouldn't say couple of, at least 6 months, we should see people, industries investing, and obviously we're hoping that jobs will be back.
So I want you to quickly talk a little more on this, which is, you've been speaking about the trends, emerging trends. So on one side, people are saying that this is going to be a temporary phenomenon with about 6 months, and then we're going to be a normal, getting into a normalcy stage. On the other side, there is also a school of thought that says that the talent requirement is likely to undergo a change. So do you see that there will be a drastic change in the talent acquisition process and the skill sets? Because you touched upon that particular topic. So I would like you to, elaborate on how would this change be in the next couple of months or a year?
Look, the entire thinking process has changed. Now, if you're thinking that, industry has a magic wand, it doesn't. Everybody is thinking of how are we going to do it, and it's not something which is not happening. It was happening. If you look at it, we faced that downside or economic downturn in 2008. So the way to hire is, the trends of hiring will, yes, it will change, because you see, the bottom line is the costs. So that is the bottom line for every business and businessman in the country, to see how are we able to curtail the cost. Look, it's about a demand and supply kind of a thing. Today, if you look at it, jobs market, is almost gone. But are you saying that, still jobs are not available? They are. They are available, but in terms of the large inflow of people, it will also, like for instance, Accenture used to hire about 50,000 people. I was talking to my colleagues today. So are they going to be hiring? Yes, they're going to be hiring. Is the number going to be 50,000? May not be. because it also depends on the kind of clients and stuff like that. So therefore, we will need lesser people. I'm in the construction industry. So are we going to be hiring? Yes, we're going to be hiring. Are we going to need new students? Yes, we're going to need fresh engineering graduates. But it also depends on the kind of contracts that we're getting. So I think the mantra here is that students today have to multi-skill. We see a wide gap in the kind of education that is being imparted, and when they come in, the kind of skills that are required. Somewhere, although we have a lot of industry and academic connect, still the quality of students that is coming out, I wouldn't say the quality is bad, but the learning curve becomes very, very long. So therefore, it becomes difficult for an organization to invest time, energy, effort, mentoring, coaching for that 1 year of hand-holding for them to. So if organizations like yours or academicians like you are able to do something and come closer, then I see it moving a lot ahead. Because if jobs are going to come into India, if like Kiran was saying, there will be so many companies or so many corporates coming into India, so many multinationals coming into India, where are the people? So there is always going to be the demand, but it's about being agile, being upskilling. Can the person do X, Y, and Z? So I think that's really the formula.
So
yeah, to add to that, Dr.
I just want you to, of course, speak on this, but also give little insights on how these schools should try to engage themselves meaningfully to upgrade the skills. If you can even add that part to your
Sure. I was about to say that, in fact. Yeah.
Absolutely.
To add to what Tanaya mentioned, I think it's so important and critical today than at any other point of time, given the situation and the economic impact globally. So not just India, we have seen this particular bio-warfare, whichever way you look at it, whatever term you use, has impacted and shaken up multiple economies across the globe, 210 countries getting impacted. And the interdependencies, because today oil and energy, that industry is devastated, right? So when you're looking at so many industries with the interdependencies we have getting devastated, while we're still hopeful and positive on the advantage India, the most important thing is the agility, which is what even Tanaya mentioned, the agility or the agile mindset and learning mindset and a growth mindset of the B school student. Gone are the days where they think, oh, I'm going to get this fancy job and go there and I'm just going to be the manager. No, their mindset should be, how do I, from a creativity and problem solving, they will be the most important skills. They need to be underscored in the B school. So the case studies, which I'm sure you've been doing all this, but when you start helping them understand, the B schools start enveloping and embracing more of the VUCA, that is the uncertainty, volatility. How does a B school student, when he or she is emerging out, be prepared for the unprepared? The uncertainties, I mean, it's easier said than done, we all know that. But Tanaya also referred to the 2008 crisis. So the case studies should be in terms of what happened earlier when there was such a major crisis and how the industries really move in from there, or how did global economies. In fact, I would recommend, if you haven't read, can you please, maybe some of you have read and you've been asking your students, look at a book by Thomas Friedman called Thank You for Being Late, 2016, has fantastic, nuggets of wisdom for us, which is relevant in our current situation. It talks about the 3 M's, that is the Moore's Law, which is the technology acceleration. Tanaya has been referring to that. So whether it's app design, you're doing things digitally. Digital transformation is here to stay. Whether it's in the education space, be it in the space of industry, wherever. So the digital skills. So look at the Moore's Law and the acceleration of technology and how does it impact the society and the economy and so on. The second one he talks about is globalization and the market, which is what exactly we are all talking today about, talent markets and how does it impact and economic impact and so on. And the third piece it talks about is a climate change, which is Mother Nature. So the 3 M's and how does it, I think today a B school grad has to be really equipped with an understanding of that big picture thinking, be it in India, be anywhere, the interdependencies and how does that impact the industry, even the industry he or she is part of, and how does he or she prepare oneself. So that's where the creativity and problem always on with the digital economy. You never know. I mean, imagine all of us today on May 1st on the digital. We're all hooked in and we're all spending our time, right? So things have changed so drastically today. It's making inroads. So it's all digital, be it your mobile. How do a B school grad really cope with all these? Do they feel so that risk-taking ability? You need not be an entrepreneur to have the risk-taking aptitude or attitude. You need to have that attitude so that you will be able to sail your organization, the organization and the department or the vertical you're championing and driving, or the team you're working with. So it's important for them to also become really entrepreneurial in their thinking, in their learning capability, and so on. So B schools, they already have that in their portfolio, majority of them. Now they should expand it, look at case studies which are more appropriate in terms of dealing with uncertainties and the supply side if there are issues. How do they cope with it, and what agility do they really demonstrate to cope with it?
I guess we all have been hearing a lot about the concept of work from home, and TCS is strongly made a propagation about it.
Apurva, if you don't mind, I'll just add to because this might be used for you. While Kiran was speaking, I was actually making notes. What is it that is lacking in students, and why does it take a long, learning curve? Is something which I was reflecting, and I thought I would share that with you because most of who are the audience are from the academia. So one is what we find is the overall social interaction of students today. So most of them they are isolated, they do not want to interact with others, which we find very difficult when we get in students. The other thing is attitude. Right from day one, they want to be CEOs or managing directors, but they have to be taught that, look, it didn't come easy for any one of us. We have gone through a lot to be where we are. Yes, things are changing. Yes, you do have CEOs who are at their 30s or 20s, and startup is the name of the game in all IITs and NITs. But fact is that if you've decided that you're coming to a corporate, you have to have that attitude of learning, which we found missing in this class. The other thing is scaling up. They should know how to scale up into different situations, different verticals, different functions. So that's one thing that we find missing. The other thing is what one can think of is, when a batch is coming in towards a specialization, if you could have, say, I'm an engineering student, I want to be in, say, cement industry. So therefore, I align with the cement industry and get trained. I want to be in the construction industry. Of course, you do have internships, but this is not just internships. This is actually grooming the students to be specialized in a particular field. If I want to be in technology, how do I learn? Because if you look at it, we are also, I'm not saying that what we're doing is the best, because we go in, we take, when I was in Accenture, we used to take people who are computer science also, mechanical also, civil also, electrical also, and obviously we found that the people who were not performing were the civil engineers, because today, pardon me for saying so, but a lot of institutions have become extremely commercial, and for them the crux of the matter is that, can I get my students placed? And that is really the worry. And so therefore, for instance, I'm a mechanical engineer, I don't want to go into technology, but I'm being forced. So I think some bit of sensitization is extremely important. So I'm sorry if I'm being harsh, but these are some of the observations, if I may, please.
But I think, Tanaya, what you made a very valid point here. And I feel that now that we are moving into a different kind of a format, likely that a lot of schools, these B schools, would have 30-40% of the content which might go online, and maybe 50-60% maybe face to face. In such circumstances, what you said, the compartmentation that we do of the specialities and movement laterally or upscaling is something that becomes difficult because of the classroom teaching. Do you see that with the change circumstances where people are getting hooked to a lot of online teaching, will this change the landscape of thinking of the business schools, students and industry? How would industry view at these things? And what would be the suggestions that industry will give at this point in time for the changes that can be brought? Because this is the right time to bring in changes in the curriculum.
Okay. See, for instance, look, first of all, the change has to begin with the professors themselves. I know that we have a very elite, so it's about understanding that the business models which were there before or which were taught are changed. So therefore, are we aware of those changes? See, I'll tell you that the typical thing what happens, and that happens, that used to happen earlier. What used to happen is, look, we have a particular methodology or a pattern or a set, and we take that and we use it. But unfortunately, it has changed, and every industry has a way of upgrading skills or changing, or it's very, very important to be agile. We keep talking about the word agility, and so that's something which the professors today have to be more digitally advanced. Maybe you need to do something on technology for professors or the elite. I'm sure you do, but it's about a formal, say, tie up with a Facebook or a Google or XYZ, or have incubation centers which are helping people to think different, students to think different, So a lot of institutions don't have these incubation centers where, and you're getting funded by the government as well. A lot of state funding can happen. So where people are able to make stuff, do stuff, experiment stuff. So that's, I think, something which is extremely important. So I think the business model is changing. I think the priorities of students are changing. A lot of students want to do a startup and just not go into regular jobs. So that is changing. The business models of the way things are or were has changed. So I think a lot of thinking has to go in. I don't think one size would fit all. Neither would I want to be a so-called guru. No, but these are thoughts which are coming in. But I'm sure with great academicians who are here, and you can even have your think tank and see which way you want to move ahead.
Kiran, can you respond?
Yeah, very valid point what Tanaya made, right? And I'm just reflecting on what are we doing in the industry, because there are moments in the industry as well where we struggle because after certain years and the company is good to great, and then you tend to carry the dead weight, in the sense you have people who may not have learnt the new skills, or they're not as innovative anymore because of long years they have put in. Right? Now, what we have been doing, especially in organizations where we continue to foster innovation and innovative thinking, is very clearly we bring in what we refer to as reverse mentoring. That is, we buddy up seniors with juniors, and that allows them that fresh energy, the vigor and vitality which a young brain has, and the innovative and creative thinking a young brain brings in is very different and very diverse. So creating those clusters, such groups, actually, we have seen, because my former, before I was with 𝗖𝗍, I'm with 𝗖𝗍. I was earlier with AMD, which is a semiconductor, and for a decade I was with them, a long time, and what we've created is these clusters. So innovation really happens. You need the experience and guidance of seniors, but you also need the vigor and vitality and that energy and passion which you see among the youngsters. So a combination would be really, really deadly. So similarly, in the B schools, I am from XLRI, so I know what it meant really, the kind of props we had, or any B school for that matter, and I associate myself with ISB. I led one of the Centers of Excellence earlier. So I understand the challenges of being in a B school, or there are certain other constraints. But at the same time, there is a fantastic way in which you can create that intoxicated, what I mean is bring in the younger folks, your students and several other younger faculty, create that incubation center as Kanaya mentioned, and these are the ones where you continue to challenge and look at the digital innovations. Okay, be it in the education space, what can we do? What are some of these online programs? I mean, look at Coursera, look at Unacademy, look at Udemy. There are all these which are now become the norm for several across the globe. What is it that they are doing? How are they innovating? How are they engaging students across the globe? What kind of different courses are they coming up with? Because unless and until they are attractive, it's not just cost effective. It's about how do you bring in, how do people sign up for them? There should be an ROI, right? That's the first thing anybody fundamentally would be looking at. So is it now, I know B schools have innovated like in the world of cricket, where we moved away from test cricket. Test cricket still continues, but it's become T20, and lot of innovation has happened in that sports arena like other sports. Same thing with B schools. We have moved away from 2-year program to 1-year exec education and 1-year programs and so on. Why can't we look at the bits and bytes of learning, modular, course-based, digital? So there are ways in which B schools can start innovating. The professors can start looking at, yeah, I'm offering this, can I offer an elective as well? And I will go digital on this, or I will do 50% digital and I will do 50% in class. So a combination, right, how the asynchronous and synchronous methods of learning can be brought in would be a way to woo more and more students and also their engagement, and also bring in more of executives or people who want to have continuous learning in the corporates or any organization for it. So there is scope for innovation and continuous learning. And this is one industry which will not die, I can tell you. But it has to innovate. It has to really move the bar in terms of how do they make it attractive. And the professors, with all their fantastic knowledge, because majority of them, I mean, look at the B schools, fabulous. But have they changed looking at the lens through which they have been looking at? Because as everything is disrupted in the world we are operating today, even the B school education, the way we look at it has to shift. So look at it as bits and bytes of learning instead of long, drawn out test match kind of a learning. So how do you make it more exciting? What do you really bring in for the students? And how do you invigorate them, challenge them? Can they create apps? Can they design something? Give them a social problem, give them an industry problem. Throw it a challenge. Create hackathons while they are at it. So start looking at it in terms of that is the readiness which the industry wants. That agility will come in as you keep pushing their boundaries and their thinking abilities. That's what I would say.
I think, Kiran, I also want you to speak about work from home. So this is something that is going on, but another part of the, or the second part of the coin is that work from anywhere or work from home, which also means work from anywhere, which would also bring in or drive in a lot of opportunities of work from for people. So this will also enhance the competitive space for the students, for the business schools, and for corporates as well. Will this change the complete structure of how the talent and recruitment space is being looked at today, and will it be different times from now?
Okay, let me play the devil's advocate. So while we're talking about work from home, there is a very clear point both Kanaya mentioned and I mentioned earlier. For certain functions in certain verticals, this is a doable, right? With all the infrastructure readiness and everything, it is completely doable, and you can do it 100% at a certain level. Occasionally they can show up for group meetings or really physically show up and meet up with their teams, but otherwise 100%. Majority of the European or the emerging, not the emerging, the mature markets, because of their infrastructure readiness and the way the homes are or the commute and everything is. Or if I take my Bangalore example, I think a large number of my colleagues and friends from IT industry especially would give a huge thumbs up for work from home, because the vagaries of commute in Bengaluru is just phenomenal. So it will be a big boon, and cutting down on that commute and being more productive and spending quality time with friends and family and so on and so forth. But if I remove that, You're talking about smaller cities, you're talking about certain other cities where it may not be as challenging. And if I take it outside IT industry, now I know families, manufacturing industry, or you're talking about, let's say, drug or pharma industry, and go into all other verticals, how will they ever accomplish work from home for any function for that matter? There's huge machinery. Will each one will have a lathe machine or whatever machine at home and they will do it? No. Then you'll have to create satellite offices or smaller offices, which from a capex flow and large scale production is a nightmare. So work from home is just not doable, not yet, unless you automate it completely and you bring in only robots and then you remotely operate them, and only the managers or certain level of thinkers and so on can operate it remotely. Then it's doable. Your entire unit or factory is run by a machine or robots. Then you can see that happening. But we are not yet there. We all know that as a fact. So work from home, again, for whom, what layer or level, is what all of us have to think. Second, services industries and product industries. We will have to segregate. So we'll have to start, it's like peeling the onion and understanding where is it doable and possible if you build the right infrastructure. The second most important bubble, which we are not yet thinking of, is what happens to policy and advocacy. That is, if all my employees, even if what TCS is saying, 75% of the employees will be operating from home, it's a lovable thing, ideal when you're looking at it in terms of the cost of operations, in terms of bringing them home, bringing them to the offices, the real estate space, but it's all negligible actually when you do the math. Anyway, now the reason I'm bringing it up is you have a lot of youngsters who are coming in. Youngsters, when I say, given our demographic dividend, they're just emerging out of not just B schools, we are also referring to engineers who are coming out of their engineering schools with their BTech or so. They really need hand-holding. We haven't seen a BTech or someone emerging and immediately you just give them an instruction or you give them a set and they're ready to take off. They need actually, and we're all so much social. Why are people having these lockdown blues in just 1 month or 40 days? The reason being, you're just pining to meet people. You're unable to just be isolated, and even if you have everything, you still feel terrible, you feel lonely, you feel isolated. So that is the other piece where, like the mature economies, we are not yet there, not at all levels. Right? Youngsters really need their colleagues or peer group or someone to hang out with, have some fun. Without that, their energy somehow feels dissipated. They can do it for some period, but they can't do it for all the time. So we are looking at other social challenges which people will experience if they're not going to start out of home. So certain sectors at certain levels, it's a great boon, and manager and above, it's a possibility for majority of their time because they have the maturity and the capability in terms of handling those. So we're not saying somebody who is new, raw, fresh from school will be able to work from home for a long period without having the ability to meet with teams or get the opportunity, even with Google Hangouts, whatever you do, they still need the flesh and blood, discussion is what we have seen, especially in India. In other economies, things have really gone in the other direction and they are much more mature and it's still possible. So it will happen. I'm not ruling out the possibility, but it's not here tomorrow. It will happen in a phased manner. This COVID situation actually made all the companies to think hard. And now you'll be surprised, BCP never had it perhaps for all the companies. Today in the business continuity planning, work from home, not large companies didn't even have it as a policy. It's like 1 day in a week, maybe, and only for certain functions, certain levels. Now it's like inevitable. So a lot of things are changing even for the organizations in terms of how they're thinking, how they're shaping. And two is, what allowances do I give to my employees if they're working from home? Because an ergonomic kind of seating, they have to create a home office. So how do I provide for all that? Is it my responsibility as an organization? Two, if he or she meets with an accident, that's where I'm coming on the policies and legal implications. What would happen? Because we're not yet there in terms of law. Will it be my liability because it's still work and he is at work or she is at work, but it's a home? So where does that line, where do you cross the line? how do you deal with those scenarios in terms of anything which happens to the employee who is working from home for the organization? I'm just opening up the window in terms of, because we're all thinking there are several other pieces which we need to harness before we arrive there in terms of 75% work from home or 100% work from home. So it's wonderful that the bellwether like TCS has made that statement, and in 5 years they want to go. But there are several things which need to be put in place, not just home infrastructure, the allowances, the mindset, how employees will engage and hang out, what is the rotation of the 25% people on site, and how do they educate the clients. So a lot of things. So it's a beautiful piece. I mean, it's an exciting, challenging kind of a scenario, but it will take a while. And once a bellwether like that does, and it's successful, you can see that several others would be interested in following suit, but it will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. But again, it won't be 100%. I can assure you, because IBM has done this experiment. They went all the way, and then they realized they're losing out on productivity, they're losing out on the social aspects and so on. And then they actually reverted. They still have the work from home policy, but they would do it in the case of business continuity, exigency, emergency, certain other issues. But they really don't want that to be the norm across the globe. So we're also learning.
Great insights, Kiran. You actually dealt with that subject so beautifully. So we're almost coming towards the end of today's.
Hold on. Actually, work from home is
one more thing that I want you to speak upon, because she has spoken about the aspect of liability, etc. So I want you to speak from your lenses of, talent head, HR head, director, in terms of dealing with the people and maybe COVID, for example. I mean, how do you deal with situation like this, which has come today and over a period of time? Because this is something very sensitive to organization and sensitive to people like you who are leading. So I would also want you to touch the social aspect before you close, and you could go ahead with the other points as well.
So I think work from home is already a passé term. While we're using it, actually it's now flexi working. Because today you are COVID, you're sitting at home, but maybe you might work from a coffee shop. So I think everybody is looking at future ready, and looking at say agile working, or for that matter flexible working or flexi working. So a lot of technology companies have stopped calling it work from home. So I think so. Therefore, I would want to say that things there also are changing. So what's new, and in being in the new and being okay. So coming to how are we handling COVID? So let me just share with you. So in my Kuwait facility, where we have a tie-up with CHRO, which is an Italian construction company, and we are working for 𝗕𝗕𝗃, which is we're making these huge tanks. So we have COVID affected employees. So how are we coping with it? It is a very, very difficult situation. So let me just share with you. So when Mahabula, the area of Kuwait, so let me tell you, this is real. So we found that this place of Mahabula was getting a lot of COVID patients. So we actually moved about 100 of our employees into a hotel. Now we had a BCP plan, but at that point in time the BCP didn't work because nobody was willing to have so many. We wanted to divide our workforce into A, B, C categories with the senior, so that there was a continuous process. So it's like a marathon, so if you were passing the baton. But unfortunately, everybody got stuck in one particular hotel. So there was lockdown in Mahabula, and where there are employees who were staying at Best Western. We found 5 people who were affected. So immediately what happens is the Ministry of Health comes down with the police or with the ambulance, and they take the people away. So sometimes your employees, you don't even know where your employees are, because they are being shifted to a hospital at 2 o'clock or 2 a.m. in the morning. So we had to try. Sometimes so I was trying. So we formed the senior management, which is the CEO, the head of health and safety, Somebody who's stranded in Italy, who's our project director, can't come back. So we formed a little WhatsApp group to say that, okay, how do we ensure? So we said, okay, so if this happens, then what do we do? So we ensured, first of all, the beds are, like little cubicles. They hardly have anything. So we made these little, bags which had like a toothpaste, a toothbrush, a blanket, mask, sanitizer, vitamin C tablets, and stuff like that. So we ensured that somebody, and not everybody can go. You need a public relations officer who can speak the local language to go. So we ensured that all of them. So I was talking to each one of them saying, are you fine? So people are saying that because this disease is very, very rare, because a lot of it you don't see the symptoms. So a lot of them are actually fine. They're like you and me. But you really can't find out the symptoms. But one person said, ma'am, I'm getting this temperature at 2 a.m. at night. So we ensured that, somebody actually went, we found out. By the way, the Indian Embassy has sent out a task force to Kuwait. So the Indian Embassy is doing some fantastic work. So we found out, so we have a lot of Indian doctors, they're also helping. So it's a foreign land, and we're sitting here and we are monitoring every day, saying that, are our employees fine? What is it that we need to do? And we are trying to find different ways of engagement. For instance, I have tried to do a mental wellness hackathon, which is comprising of a yoga guru, of do-it-yourself, of how to eat healthy, so stuff like that. We are trying to get the people engaged, so that, because they are undergoing a lot of trauma. Plus, I have my population, some of my employees are in Papua New Guinea, which is quadrant off. It's a small island above Australia. So that's a different thing. We opened offices in UAE, but unfortunately, because of the hygiene conditions, so every situation is different, Apurva. We were all set to start our offices in Hazira, our engineering division, but there's a lot of COVID-19 cases there. So every situation, but the thing is, we have to be agile, we have to be quick, we have to have quick turnarounds. We have to have the ability to be able to be quick and act immediately. Otherwise, time just goes away.
Absolutely, bang on. It's really very informative. And the quick 2-3 questions, but I guess you've already answered them. This is work from home. Where will there be? There are going to be psychological challenges, etc. I guess Tanaya, you already touched upon that. And this one question, which is there from Pratap Reddy, says that every recruiter is not honoring the placement offers. And his question is, where is the funding for incubators? I guess we can take that offline. But not every recruiter is honoring. If you have any answer for that.
Yeah, as I mentioned, some of the industries are already impacted terribly, because it could be retail, it could be manufacturing, it could be one of those industries which do not see a growth coming up, right, in the next 6 months. Hence, they will not be able to take on people. They may be in the path for actually losing some of their own workforce. So given that scenario, they cannot really bring in more members because it's suicidal for the organization. But barring that, especially in IT, I see people continue to hire, but maybe not in the same large numbers as they used to. So that's where we are. MSMEs and services industries, it's all dependent on the clients. So if the clients are not honoring their contracts or rewriting their contracts or reviewing the contracts, obviously they're going to wait and watch, and the margins, they'll have to review all that. Only then they will honor the commitment. So things can be deferred right now with some of the firms, because they are in that state of uncertainty themselves.
I guess we come to the end of the session today, though there is someone called Dr. 𝗤𝗂𝘁𝗂𝘂𝗧 who says that he wants to speak a few lines. So I guess we're short on time. If there are any closing remarks from both of you, we're happy to have them and close the webinar today. Just a line from both of you.
So, Tanaya, you want to go first?
I'll keep it short and sweet. I think it was wonderful. If you continue to have such sessions, I'm sure that the academia will advance. I'm proposing that there should be a think tank which is of academicians and corporates to see how you can move forward, because the business models are changing, the hiring is changing, and what is it that the industry really needs at this point in time. So I think I would suggest that there's working in close quarters will really help. I think all of you are brilliant, and you have you can see things, but I would request you to look at through a different lens, be more agile, because liquid workforce is here to stay. Gig economy is here to stay. The entire way the world is looking at is different. Disruption is the norm. Innovation is what everybody is looking at. So that's my 2 bits to you.
Absolutely. I'm looking at artificial intelligence and machine learning gaining ground. And this is a fantastic opportunity given the kind of criticality economies are facing world over. You will see more and more of, along with digital transformation skills, you would also see machine learning and AI and apps. So be it the student world, be it the innovations in education space, you'll continue to enjoy the fruits of such thinkers, and startups will continue to grow. So that's where the innovation and the disruption keeps us going. So keep up with the energy, and these kind of interactions I completely welcome, because that's how we all learn. This is our agility as well, exchanging views, learning from each other. So every 2 months or so, if there is this kind of a connect, I would say there is that learning pipeline which is continuing to keep it open, and this will funnel back to the students as well, not just the profs. So that is going to keep the life in a continuum. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, both of you, Dr. Kiran and Dr. Tanaya, for such an insightful talk today. This is highly inspirational and motivational for all of us today. And towards the end, we have some thank you coming to you from some of the members here. Parag Kayakura has thanked you. Dr. Vijay Bhaskar has also sent in his deep thanks to the 3 of us. So look forward to a long-term association with the Association of Indian Management Schools, and in future look forward to inviting you again on some different forums. Thank you so much. So we close for the day.
Thank you very much.